Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Sherman, and in this game, I'll just spoil a little bit. I'm gonna get Confederate with Halsey. With this ship, it's absolutely ridiculous. The DPM, the number of shells being fired, is hilarious, and I always have a good time whenever I'm playing Sherman and I can activate Halsey's Confederate feature, which gives us a 20% reload buff. And with this build, I'm playing rather aggressively for a gun build. You'll notice I only spawn in with 2 smokes, that's the default amount, so we're not even taking Superintendent here. And I think with Sherman, it can be a little bit hard to play like that, but if you're playing Sherman with more smokes and you're a little more stationary, you do run the risk of not being able to reposition all that quickly. The difference between this ship and Marceau, of course, is that this ship has the very nice shell arcs, allowing you to put in a lot of damage very easily from range, but you lack the speed and maneuverability that allows you to get around the map quickly, so you're going to have better map awareness with the Sherman compared to a Marceau. But Sherman does allow you to farm a little easier from range. That's at least kind of how I look at these two ships. Don't worry, we'll look at them both a little bit more once I go over the coal destroyers, as we're almost finished up with the battleships at this point, so the DDs are coming. But I had a good time, a good game in Sherman, that I just had to share because it's so much fun. This ship also gets sap, which is just incredibly powerful. It's really what cranks up the DPM on this ship. The base DPM of the HE is actually pretty much the same. I think it's the exact same as gearing HE. So even though our shell velocity is much better, and we still have that same DPM as a gearing does with that HE. The difference though with the sap is the alpha damage is just so much higher with that same reload. So that's where we're gonna pump out a ton of damage. It also is pretty good at setting fires with the HE. So you don't want to just spam sap, but for the most part it is a sap destroyer, since those angles that they pen at is so good. You can usually get away with it at relatively angled ships anyway and get some pretty solid damage. We do run into the Shimakaze here, hoping to take him out before he gets out of our range. Again, we're not the quickest ship in the world, so he actually can get away here, potentially, and 5.6 I believe is his detection. So really charging at him here to try and finish him off, and we do. So fortunately to dig him out early, and that clears this flank. And that might be a bit of an issue, right? Where we clear a flank and then we're just so far out of range, out of the battle for so long. But with this ship, we do have a lot of gun range. I do take one of the range upgrades, and with that I find I'm oftentimes in a good position to farm without giving up too much on the damage side and not getting too greedy for maybe that 17-kilometer build where I could be shooting at people further away, but then it gets much more difficult to lead and hit my targets. This shell velocity should not be underestimated though, especially at these mid-ranges. 12 kilometers is pretty far to be hitting something like a Gdansk, and yet we're able to do it relatively consistently. And that's a really powerful thing to have with the Sherman. So it is even better than the Joshua Humphreys at the super gearing, essentially. Gearing's shell velocity is so slow these days. They gave the Humphreys a little bit better, but Sherman still clears both of them in that regard. Another thing I really enjoy about this full gun build, less focused on the smokes or maybe a little less survivability, less concealment focused, I'm shooting my guns in open water, and that allows me to constantly be on the move. So anytime I'm getting into positions like this where the enemy team's running from this flank, I'm not getting bogged down or stuck in a smoke that I want to maximize the value out of. I'm still just moving around, getting closer to the actual battle at the B cap in this case, while also still trying to deal some good damage to these guys as they kite away. So it's a much harder build to play, but I think it does make this ship more powerful. Not only because the guns are going to deal more damage, but you're oftentimes going to be in the correct positions more often if you're not getting stopped in those smoke screens. But open water Sherman can be very hard because it's not only slow, makes it hard to reposition and get towards where you need to be to most impact the game, but also open water gunboating with such a slow and large destroyer means you can take a lot of damage, so you have to be a little bit careful with that. And that's typically what I'm saving my smokes for, is when I get into trouble, as I will later in this game, you're gonna see, but that's oftentimes the thing I'm saving my smoke screens for. or if there's a really particularly good opportunity to farm as people are pushing into me, for example. But you're not always going to have spotting, right? That's something else to consider as a DD. It sucks to be a gunboat DD that smokes up and then realize you were the one spotting everything, and now you have nothing to shoot at, and it's basically a wasted smoke and wasted damage output. That is a little bit unfortunate when that happens. So within the Sherman, I'm trying not to be in positions like that quite so much. At longer ranges there, missing a lot on the Wisconsin, unfortunately. You do have to lead and aim quite high, especially as people are kiting away, since the shells typically are pulled short. That's not only for battleships. It's much more noticeable with battleships, since you do have like a 30 or 40 second reload, depending on the battleship you're playing. Here we have, what, like a 1 second reload, right? It's less noticeable, but you still have it when people are turning away that suddenly 5 to 10 seconds worth of salvos are just straight up missing people. The Schlieffen does go down rather quickly, fortunately, otherwise I would have been forced to smoke, as Schlieffen secondaries can tear you up rather quickly, even at longer ranges. Those secondaries are terrifying, so I probably would have smoked up if he was on more HP, as I do want to save some of that HP for the later game. Wisconsin's still at pretty far range, and again, just farming a little bit here and there, but trying to push towards where the enemy team is. This would also be the case if the enemy team was much stronger on my flank. I would be kind of kiting away, not wanting to get stuck in a smoke and then caught up to. Since the Sherman's slow, people can catch up to you rather quickly in some of these battleships and cruisers these days that are actually quicker than the Sherman. So you have to be careful with your positioning in that regard as well. And Henry opens up on us, so got to be a little careful. Wisconsin, 13 kilometers away with the accuracy that ship has. Pretty scary thing to deal with. Maybe the carrier's around, so I actually am going to smoke up here just to save some HP. And we notice that the FDR is within range, Republic is coming within range. This is a good opportunity to smoke as well, just even if there wasn't pressure on me from this Henry, just to hopefully deal some damage to these guys from our smoke screen. And I was the one spotting. There it is. So I'm going to poke just a little bit, but I'm hoping that maybe our Marceau pokes out, or maybe our carrier gets some spotting for us. And we do. So not too bad of a smoke screen, but that is something to be aware of. Up to nearly 100k damage in this one. 4 kills already. Feels pretty good. Nearly on the Kraken, and just that juicy damage into a carrier. Feels good whenever you can catch one of these guys out and deal some really nice damage. I haven't talked about the AA. You do have a defensive fire, which can help. It's only really going to be useful if the carrier decides to walk into your flak puffs, which isn't always going to happen, let's be honest. So it's nice to have a defensive fire, I suppose, but for the most part, I wouldn't rely on it, especially with Sherman being so clumsy. It's large. You're going to take a lot of damage from carriers if they are on your flank a lot. So if you're noticing that the carrier's around going after you, I would recommend sticking towards where your teammates are. With this extra range and shell velocity, you still can play around your teammates close to their AA bubbles and still get some damage output in. Although, as I say that, we shoot down like 16 planes with that defensive fire. Okay, there it is. Confederate with Halsey. Towards the end of this game, unfortunately, but hey, look at this DPM now. It's like a 0.8 second reload. It just becomes a machine gun, man. It is so hilarious. I love it. And man, that's sap. That's sap damage into a Republic, man. That's the other thing, is it pens over 32 millimeters of armor. That's always the major threshold at these higher tiers. If you can pen 32 millimeters of armor, you're going to do some extreme damage into battleships and cruisers. That is going to be the Kraken and just the Henry left over. Just look at that. It's beautiful, man. No arms race buffs in this one. That's always the best, is when you get the arms race triple reload and the Halsey Confederate on the Sherman. Maybe some AR because you're low HP too. So it can get even quicker than this. But man, what a fun ship. It is hard to play though, so I can understand if you'd rather go for a Marceau or some of the other DDs. Again, we'll take a look at those soon, I hope. But very good ship to go for Cole, in my opinion. A lot of fun, but can be hard to play. I did hear a rumor, I don't know if it's like that true or not, but apparently a lot of people traded in their Sherman in this most recent trade-in event, And I guess that's just because it's hard to play and there's some decent options to trade it in for. And you could always get your Sherman back for coal later on as well. So I can understand that a little bit, but for me, this is one of the better coal ships available, most fun. Even if it is a little hard to play, just, man, that DPM is just hilarious to me. But we do manage to get the win in this one, getting ourselves 177,000 damage. Could have been more, but for a game where the enemy team kind of ran away from us, that's kind of worst case scenario for a destroyer a lot of the time when it comes to damage output. I will gladly take it. Obviously, not every game is going to look like that, especially at high tier where we're just getting Halsey Confederate and that level of DPM, but it happens more than I would think, I suppose, just because, I mean, that range, 15 kilometers of range with good shell velocity means you're rather consistent, even at these more passive meta at higher tier, just because the ship has decent concealment still. I, with this build, am not actually taking concealment on my commander, opting for Fearless Brawler instead, just to give myself that extra range here with main better and AA expert, and then just all the DPM buffs I can take on the main guns. It's a greedy build. It's a very greedy build not to have Superintendent or Concealment. If you're struggling with Sherman and you're finding that you die a lot, having that extra smoke to keep you alive so you can use them a little bit more liberally, you don't have to deal with that worry or fear that you're going to run out of smokes in the late game quite as much. And then Concealment so that you're spotted less of the time when you don't want to be. That can help out a lot. So you could just get rid of main better and AA specialist and Fearless Brawler for that. I would still keep the 15 kilometers of range. Your DPM will suffer a bit without these two, but let's be honest, Sherman DPM is still very, very, very good even without those two. I do run reload on the upgrades though. That's quite a substantial buff that's always there. And then concealment here as well, propulsion mod, since it's a little sluggish to get going. We do have a hydro to deal with the torpedoes, but it's not always available. So we do have to be a little careful of that. Big ship that's a little clumsy, we can take a lot of damage there because of those torpedoes. Gotta be careful. But that's gonna do it. That's the Sherman, at least for now. Just a ridiculously fun game. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.